High heels, created in 15th century Persia to help soldiers stay in their stirrups, they have since become a symbol of modern fashion. It's also become popular with the upcycling community, which takes old things and, as the name implies, reuses them to create new items. Well, in the upcycling community, I feel like there's one specific pair of shoes that kind of goes a bit overlooked as its potential goes. And that is the wedge. This shoe has a wide canvas that you can paint on, express yourself on, in many more different ways than I feel like can just go with decoupaging or just simple stripes. You see, I feel like I've come up with a new technique that could be used on these. So join me today as we take this humble wedge and transform it into something beautiful, using a technique that I don't think anyone has really ever seen before. But where did the wedge come from? Well, first we gotta go back to the 1930s, where the political and economic crisis would soon lead up to World War II. The wedge was created by Salvatore Ferragamo, whose name I probably absolutely butchered, so I'll write it on the screen. But back then in the 1930s, he was known as the shoemaker to the stars. You see, Salvatore Ferragamo was very popular with famous people. However, there was one problem with his shoes, or with any high heel back then. They were extremely uncomfortable.
So I had a long explanation for this, but let's make it short and simple. Basically, high heels have your foot at such a high angle that the two bones are going to put pressure on each other, which is not good. Also, the heels can shorten the calf muscle, and wedges don't do that because they're at such a flat angle.
A cork because steel wasn't available for traditional high heels anymore. You see, the mathematics he studied helped him figure out the correct angle in which a foot can be positioned, in which to make it less uncomfortable. So, thanks to the wedge, we now have a bit of a better option of heels to wear. There were 41 years between our two pieces of inspiration. In 1930, we had the wedge. Before our next piece of inspiration, we looked towards the sky. Starry night sky. Starry Night, that is, created in 1889, 40 years before the wedge. We're going to be taking inspiration from the blues and golds and the swirls that are a part of this magnificent painting. And we're going to use those and translate them into resin on our wedge shoes. But before that, we have a lot of work we need to do.
So I got these shoes at Goodwill for about $8. And I saw some on the internet going for $20 used, but there was also a pair going for $60. Obviously, these are not worth $60 due to the fact that the strap is actually broken and that they're in pretty bad shape. Now, they look like cork. However, if you take a bit of a closer look and you peel back part of it, you will discover that it is not actually cork, but instead, it's actually... Okay, but seriously, behind this cork facade it has going on, there is actually a sticky cheesecloth type deal that was used to texturize the main plastic heel. That we're gonna have to remove. And the fact that these shoes are not thoroughly cork is actually a good thing for us, because we will be carving into that plastic heel later on. Now, in order to get there, we're going to need to, of course, dismantle the shoe, which means stripping off the cork and all that, taking apart the heel, and even taking off the straps. Now, these shoes obviously aren't going to need just painting to make them look good. This is going to be a full facial reconstruction that's going to be going on. So, let's get into it. Alright, it's day one. And now we're on to step one. Step one is dismantle the shoes. Now we're gonna have to separate the sole, which is already starting to begin to separate, from the wedge. That way we can take the straps off, and then we can also peel this off and eventually resin over it. In order from least odd to most odd, We have clips, an X-Acto knife for cutting away straps, pliers for pulling away the sole or other straps, a hammer and a chisel in order to chisel beneath the sole of the shoe, and a spatula for just in case we need to make eggs, I guess. Let's begin. First things first, we're going to get our chisel and our hammer. Using the chisel, we're going to go beneath this sole here, try and pry it up by using a rocking motion, and that is working very effectively. Now, as you can see, we've gotten under there. Now dragging it along, we can kind of separate it. Repeat on the other side. There we go. And here we can see that the shoe is not completely cork. Okay, now I think we're going to start from the tip of the shoe. Once again, using rocking motions, get beneath the sole of the shoe, peel it up, drag your chisel down, and we're almost there. We're almost there. It appears that the piece that stuck the most is that one. And there we go. The sole is now separated from the bottom wedge. Now, we also didn't need to worry about the straps for now. However, I might want to reuse the bottom of the shoe, the sole of the shoe. So, apparently we can just easily peel that up. Oh, I spoke too soon. Using an X-Acto knife, we're going to try our best to cut under here. There we go. Pry that loose. Now on this side, it looks like we're not going to need the X-Acto knife because we peeled that up nice and easy. Now, the straps are gone. Now you can choose to save these. You can choose to save the buckle, especially if you're a cosplayer and you need small buckles. It's very difficult to find these, so I recommend saving that. But for now, just toss it to the side. Where did the cap from this go? There it is. Put the cap back on. And now, we can start peeling this off. So just peel that away like that. Now, granted, the only reason this is working is because these are not thoroughly corked. Hey, voiceover me again. So at this point, you should probably take the bottoms of the shoes off as well. You know, the rubber bits. And there you have it. You have just the sole of the shoe. Or I guess it's not really the sole, but you have the shoe. I have one little piece there, so I'm going to use my pliers and pull that out. There we go. We now have the wedge. Now repeat with the other shoe. time-lapse, I actually sanded these down alongside with the Gogh gun. And for that, I used P100, which is a green coarse grit, and 220C, which is this kind of light brown fine grit. Now that we have all the adhesive off of them, we're gonna go take them to the sink and wash them off with soapy water.
Alright, so now we're going to tape the bottom of the shoes, and then we're going to spray paint them with this painted primer in one. And the color really doesn't matter because we're going to be painting over them anyways with the dark colors. The key word there is dark colors. If you're doing light colors, it's best to stick with white. Just going to go tape around. Make sure to line it up properly.
Just because the heels are drying outside doesn't mean we can't do anything right now. In fact, right now, we can start making our own straw. Nope, we're gonna do that later. Well, part with the rest of the painting. All right, now our shoes have been sanded, primed, and painted with a base coat to help the paint stick better. We are now gonna go into doing the actual base coat. Now, in order to get the effect we desire, we have to do a base coat of all of these colors. All of these colors being blue, black, a color shifting blue, and gold. It just needs to be somewhat like that. As you can see here, this skull here had resin just go directly on it. Therefore, you have all this white behind it. Now, that's a cool effect and all, but we want it to look like this, like Gogh Starry Night. So in order to do that, we're going to do a base coat of blues, just like on this skull. And then over those blues, we'll do the colors. Today we're going to resin the heels. So I've removed the bottom part of the shoe and I will also tape it up. That way we don't fill these holes with resin. So for the resin colorants, I have several colors from the Pearl Effects collection. We have Interference Blue, Sparkle Gold, Antique Bronze, Sky Blue, and Carbon Black. Now we're going to mix Sky Blue and Carbon Black together. That'll create the darker blues that we see in the painting. The bronze is a very small part of it, but it does make an impact. Sorry, bronze, you're not going to be able to make it in. So let's start mixing these colors up, and then we'll move on to resin. Okay, so today we're using the amazing clear cast resin. This is a long explanation. Let's get into the short one. All right, so resin comes in two parts. You have part A, which is the base, part B, which is the hardener, and you mix them in a 1-to-1 ratio. Meaning, if 1 millimeter of A is used, 1 millimeter of B is also used. If you mix it for 2 minutes, scrape the sides and bottom, boom, you're going to be done, and you mix it into the pigments. So do that. Oh, goodness. Okay. This is basically impossible. So the way I did this, I had my tripod around my neck with my phone on it. So it was sliding everywhere. That's why I'm saying this is impossible, because I didn't catch, like, any of this on film. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this. I'm gonna try my best to catch this on film. I'm gonna just put some of it along the shoe, like that. I'm not sure if you can see what I'm doing. I'm not sure if I can see what I'm even doing. So do that. So I was out here recording a video and baby, what did you do? Chloe, are you stuck? Oh, hold on, girly. Hold on. Stuck there. Okay. There you go, baby. There you go, you're free. You're free. There you go. Okay, so in order to transfer these designs onto the shoe, I had a few ideas in mind. Either I use puffy paint like this and trace out the patterns, or I actually carve it into the shoe and then fill it with resin. After much debating, I have decided to instead fill it with resin and carve into the shoe, which means I'm gonna have to scrape all this off. So for carving the shoes, I used the Dremel carving bit 194, which actually came in a 2-pack. And I actually just carved little swirls and bits in it in little tiny lines for putting resin in later with a pipette. And how that turned out, well, so here are our shoes. After carving them with a Dremel, I then went in with the color shifting blue paint and painted inside of the lines, and I used gold inside the gold bits, as one would logically do. So here it is, all filled with resin. There are a few drips here and there that do need to be cleaned up, but that's easy enough. Then I now just have to decide if I'm gonna actually do the roses that I was going to paint on the heel. After consulting with my fellow artistic Discord peeps, I've decided, yes, I'm going to do the rose. We'll have to see. So I used a sandpaper bit to sand off the major drips off the shoe. And then I also had to touch up a bit with some blue paint. But I also did try to sandpaper off the tape because some resin had gotten over it. So after that, I actually decided to go with the rose. So I outlined a rose on the heel with some silver Sharpie, filled it in with some black paint. And originally I was debating whether to do it or not, but after consulting with my Discord people, I actually decided to go with the roses after all. And I decided to do another Van Gogh piece on it. So when I looked up Van Gogh roses, I got pink roses in a pot. So after I did the base of red, I actually started to really observe the painting and notice the pinks and everything and how there's like no bold lines, which is what I would have done if I had just gone ahead with the rose. So after that, I used a light pink and I kind of did petal shapes around the red. After that, I added a bit more red to a bit of the pink, did other petal shapes, and then I actually went in with a bit more red and kind of blended it into some of those shapes. And then after that, I used straight up red to kind of outline those shapes, which in order to outline the petals, I actually did the little swirly thing in the center for a rose, and then I did like these two arches that came to a point at the top where they met for the outer petals. And then I decided to go in with muted greens and add a bit more darker greens in some areas and actually outline them with the end of a paintbrush. So they had those bold, thick outlines that Van Gogh's original painting had. Hello, today we're going to be making the straps for the shoes. So to start out, we're actually going to be making the toe straps. So in order to make the toe straps, we're actually going to be using 1-inch velvet ribbon, and we're going to need 2 7-inch pieces and 2 5-inch pieces of it. Now you're also going to need interfacing and lining. However, we're going to cut those out later because their size really depends on the final dimensions of our toe straps. Now for this next part, we're going to take our 7-inch and our 5-inch piece of ribbon. We're going to find the center, and then we're going to line them up that way. After that, we're going to put them wrong sides together, and then sew along the top. After that, we open it up, and we press them flat. So using a threaded needle and long stitches, you're going to sew it in only certain places, and pull it taut. Then knot it. After that, we're going to use the side we just made, and we're going to cut lining bigger than it and interfacing smaller than it. Iron on the interfacing on the wrong side of the strap. Then with the right sides together for the lining, you're going to only sew the top and the bottom. Flip it inside out and sew the edges. After that, using an iron, you're going to press it flat. For the bow embellishment, you're going to take a 4-inch piece of ribbon and you're going to pull the corners down and glue them or sew them. After that, you're going to pinch the center, glue or sew that, and then you're going to wrap a small ribbon around it. After that, you're done. Next up, we have the heel cuff, which consists of several parts, which is the ribbon that you'll tie the shoe on with, the channel that the ribbon goes through, and the back piece, which has an end piece and a middle piece. Now, for this, you're going to need several size components, which you can pause the video to see here. However, for the back of the heel, you can also just use 3-inch tall pieces by 1.5 inches, and then just cut out the shape later. Now, it's very similar as to what we did before. Sew them right sides together, and then keep on going along with 5 pieces in the middle and 2 in the end. They should be 7 pieces long. After that, cut the interfacing smaller than it and iron the interfacing on the wrong side. Next, you're going to take a 2 by 7-inch piece of fabric and you're going to double fold the ends and sew those to prevent fraying. Then you're going to pin that right side together to the other side. Cut the lining bigger than it, and this is where it gets tricky, because now you're going to fold the channel up in half and pin that right sides together to the lining. After that, you're going to sew along the top, and the channel should be inside of it. Then you're going to flip it inside out and sew it along the bottom. After that, use a pencil or a pen to thread the ribbon through the channel. Pull it out through the other side, and you're done. So when you're done with the backs of the heels, they should look like this. And we also have our top pieces. When we add the finishing touches, we'll add the bows and the straps. But for now, I'm gonna do a bit of painting and then we'll work on these. I don't know how to talk you through the next part, but basically I just used this holographic vinyl as a kind of branding type thing for me. And I just covered it in the shoe, cut a few notches in it, and then I used a fake leather for the middle of the shoe, and I just hot glued all that on. Is it still a sin if I'm using it for something like this? At least I'm not using it to make a phone case. Alright, so after that, I finally got to the part where I epoxied the shoes together. I used Gorilla Epoxy, which is super strong. It's just like using regular epoxy, except this one comes in a syringe so you can get equal amounts, but first off, you need to make sure both sides are coming out first. After that, I just applied it to the bottom of the shoe, put the bottoms of the shoe on. I used a face mask brush, one of the silicone face mask brush, to spread it around on most of the parts. And then I just taped everything back on to make sure it stayed. I had to make sure it was all aligned first though, because there's no getting this stuff off. Once it's on there, it's on. If you mess up, you better get to it before it dries. So, as you can see, I'm taping it on right now. And then, after all of that, I did the top, which also required a lot of tape. Because apparently, I had to cut out little shapes on the bottom of the shoe so that everything would fit properly. I did not do that. So if I ever have a chance to redeem myself, I will redeem myself by making sure I cut out the pieces that I need to have there on the shoe. But yeah, it was very tricky for me to get it realigned and stuff because I had just glued over what was already there, making it thicker than before. So you can see me here trying to force it into that curve with tape. It didn't really work very well. So the angles messed up on them, and that's it. Today, we've learned where the wedge came from, why it was created, and we also learned how to take a pair of boring old shoes from Goodwill and turn them into something truly unique and new. Something the upcycling community, I hope, considers for a while, maybe. Anyways, I hope today you've learned something new, maybe another technique or two. But, anyways, this just doesn't go with these shoes. Join me next time. Maybe we'll make something that will. Or maybe focus on something a little smaller. Something a little bit more familiar to some of us who may have grown up watching Nickelodeon, perhaps. I don't know. Anyways, I'm AOA Loki23, and this has been my DIY. Hi, thanks for watching my video. This is my very first YouTube video, so if you like it, consider subscribing maybe? Anyways, I greatly appreciate any criticism, so leave it down in the comments below. Okay, thanks, bye!
Where did this wedge come from? Oh, shit!